If you're thinking of social change in our time, well, the chances are you're thinking of what? The computer, the internet, the mobile phone, and sure, they've had a big change, but they are nothing compared to the arrival of this. In the 1800s, if you wanted to go somewhere, you were either on foot or on your horse, and a trip to Edinburgh from London would take you a couple of weeks. By coach, you're talking about 3 days. By railway, you're talking about 7 hours to get there, so it's pretty astounding. Now, during the 1800s, the Victorians laid something like 20,000 kilometres of track, and the impact of it was huge. Prior to the railways, you wanted building materials from your house. You were going no further than 10 to 20 kilometres, the same to get anything that you wanted, whatever it was you wanted. Your crocks, your pots, your tools, your house, your roofing, your furniture, your clothes. It was all in the locality. After the arrival of the railways, of course, that was very, very different. So for us, it's actually really hard to get a grasp on the changes this made. The railways, they reached into every aspect of our lives. They changed what we bought and where we bought it. Clothes, shoes, food, crocs, the things that you made your house of, and the amount of travel that you could suddenly do. The kind of changes we're talking about went far beyond the internet. There is an argument that the Industrial Revolution only really happened because of the railways. Its first job was shifting bulk goods around. It began its life in 1825 in the Stockton to Darlington Railway, and originally was meant for moving coal to the port of Stockton. It was the miners that looked at it and thought, that's a handy lift to work, and they would jump on. And of course the owner of the railway, spotting an opportunity, started to charge for the ride. This is Amy Johnson. She died off the beach at Herne Bay in 1941, January 30th, but of course the first controlled flight was 1893 by Otto Lilienthal. The one we all remember is 1903 and the Wright brothers, and you can imagine the kind of excitement that that would have caused around the world and how it would have sparked everybody's imagination. Given that and the influence that trains had in that period, of course, it was no surprise that people were looking about. And they were thinking, that propeller, hey, it's quite a job. What else can we stick it on? And it was the Russians in 1917 who stuck it on a train called the Aero Wagon. The Aero Wagon was the brainchild of Valery Nabokovsky, a Soviet engineer from Latvia, and the amazing thing was, it worked. It had a top speed of 140 kilometers per hour. It was on the 24th of July 1921 on a trip between Moscow and Tula. There was an unfortunate crash where 6 died immediately and a 7th man died later of his injuries. The official investigation said that it was poor condition of the track, but lots of conspiracy theories blamed old Leon Trotsky for having arranged the accident. However, the Aero Wagon was the precursor to the German Schienen Zeppelin railcar. The rail Zeppelin was the brainchild of Franz Krukenberg in 1929, and it set a world speed record of 230 kilometers per hour, which it held until 1954. But it was an experimental car, and there were quite a few things that it couldn't do. One of them was climb gradients. Although the acceleration was impressive and the speed was impressive, it had the inherent disadvantage of there was a propeller on the back. So it is inherently difficult to attach other wagons to it to make it a proper train. And of course, rushing through a station with the propeller whizzing about is a bit like covering the outside of a train with blenders. It wasn't particularly the safest form of transport, but it was the height of German engineering at the time, and so it was exhibited throughout Germany in 1931. Unfortunately, of course, it went out of service and it was dismantled in 1939, and no surviving examples exist. However, it did inspire the Benny railplane. George Benny was a Scot who lived near Glasgow, and he began development of his railplane in 1921, and in 1929 to 1930 he built a stretch of track to run his prototype on to demonstrate what it could actually do, and it had a propeller at the front and the back. Benny reckoned it could do something like 120 miles an hour. Now his plan was to use it with the existing rail track where it could form a fast service. There was a huge amount of interest in it and lots of proposed lines, but nothing came of it. In 1937 Benny went bankrupt because he'd financed most of the thing himself. Now the prototype railplane just sat idle at Milngavie until it was sold for scrap in 1956, and Benny died the following year. About all that's left of the rail train is a memorial plaque to him. So although at first sight the idea of a plane train seems, well, about as mad as a bag of kittens, there are two ways to look at this. One is that sometimes people are just crackpots and they come up with the weirdest of things, and the other way is to think, aren't people amazing and inventive, and we'll try all kinds of things to see what works? Because although it's kind of universally agreed the idea of strapping a propeller onto the back of a train is not particularly good because, well, it's lethal, it has no torque, you can't reverse it, it has given birth to a way of looking at transport that is alternative. So if you can strap a propeller onto something, you can strap a jet engine onto something, and that gave birth to the American Black Beetle and the Russian turbojet, and has spawned a whole lot of interest in that kind of travel, that way of looking at things. And to my mind, that's what's important about this. It's an alternative way of looking at things that, sure, can give you some crackpot ideas, but really can get you looking at stuff out of the box, and good stuff comes out of that. So writing these things off as, wow, the inventions of slightly deranged minds, I think is the wrong approach. It's always worth looking at these things and thinking and looking and seeing how people think outside the box. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe.